Hey there, everyone. So with the new release of the Super Smash Bros. Model import script, a lot of people are wondering, hey, how do I put this into Blender? I don't know how the textures are supported. I don't know, how to just do the whole process. So I figured it out, at least to the best of my knowledge, and so I'm going to walk you through at least one model. So here is actually Blender 2.8, and we're real-time rendering Dark Samus. So I'll get to that point, but we're going to actually be using Blender 2.79 to start off. Now, there's a few things that you're going to need to begin with. The first is 3ds Max, specifically the student version of 2019. You're going to need the Max script to import it, and you're going to need Blender 2.79 or 2.8 or both. And for the textures, you're going to need a program called QuickBMS, which is a texture importing program, and you'll need a script in order to import the specific file types. And finally, you'll need Noesis in order to convert from DDS to PNG. Windows can't read it correctly because I think the data type is slightly different, but it's still DDS. So to start off with, we're going to go into 3ds Max and run scripting, run script, find the script we downloaded, it's in the description, hit open, import, and find the model. So I'm going to be using Ganondorf. I really like his new design. So it's going to take a little while to import just because of all of the objects and expressions and the rigging and all sorts of stuff. So just give it some time to process and then come back. So the model's been imported into 3ds Max. So we want to make sure that everything is selected. Hit File, Export, and Export. And I'm just going to save it as Ganondorf. I've already saved it, but I'll save it again. Yep. And OK. And then I'll export it. And now we want to take a break from 3D and go into QuickBMS, which is right here. And it'll show you where you can put the file of the script, open, and now we want to go back into data, models, and find the textures we want to use. All right, and so the file format we'll be using is NUT-EXB. In Smash 4, it was NUT, but I think EXB is just different format or whatnot. Just make sure you don't include any NUMATB or something. Yeah, just make sure it's just NUT-EXB. That's all I want. All right, and good. Open, and then we want to make a new folder right here. Right, come on. New, there we go. New folder, textures, save. And then it goes through all of them and converts them to DDS. All right, hit enter. And so now you'll have to go into Noesis, which I have open here, and convert them from DDS to PNG. So it's right here, Ganon, model, body, C0, and textures. So you can see here that there are colors. So here's cape. So it's definitely working. So instead of having to right-click export every single one of these files, we want to go to Tools, Batch Process, DDS to PNG. And if you don't want each texture in its own folder, you just want to remove this right here in Name Files and hit Folder Batch, Textures, OK, and Export. And so it runs through all of them and converts them into PNGs. Batch file complete. OK. Now if we go back into textures to Ganon, you can see that we have textures as PNGs. Nice. Now we can go into Blender and import. Import FBX, Ultimate Models, and we want Ganon. Model, body, actually no, sorry. I saved him right here. Alright, so he's imported correctly. Well, not correctly, but he's imported. And he's rotated, and there's a bunch of facial expressions. So we're going to open up a new tab. Text editor, hit new, and then copy this script into it. I just wrote it so it'll sort through all the facial expressions and the armature. Hit run script. And now everything is sorted correctly. So on this layer, there are all the facial expressions. and then on this layer is the armature for animation. But for right now, in order to get the textures on correctly, we're just going to be using the mesh itself. So we want to select one, go into the object mode, or the material mode, and go into node editor. Now, it gives you a set of nodes to start off with, but we don't really want this because it's all convoluted. So I just want to make sure that we're on the right material. So select just the texture. Yep. So it's def Ganon at 1. Now we can start working with stuff. Delete everything except for the material out. Add shader principled, or not principled hair, sorry. Add shader principled BSDF. Plug this in, and then hit add, texture, image texture. So now we want to locate the correct texture. So let's find Ganondorf, model, body, textures. And we're going to click this icon so that we can see them as previews. So I believe this is what we're going to be looking for, is the def Ganon 001. Hit open image and plug it in. Now let's preview it to make sure it's correct. And that looks pretty correct. Yep, don't think there's any issues there. However, it's not just the diffuse color. There's metallic, specular, roughness, and normal, as well as emission that we need to take care of. And Nintendo this time made the images a little interesting, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So, for example, let's load the normal and the PRM. So the normal goes down here, duplicate it, and then find the PRM. So it's the call out and then PRM out. So with a PRM, it looks kind of like a normal map, and I can show you what that looks like here. However, it's transparent and it's all wacky, but in reality, so the R channel is, each channel of each color is reserved for a specific map. So instead of having 4 images, you have 1 image. So the red channel is metalness, the green is roughness, the blue is AO, and then the alpha is specular. So in order to separate, we want to go into search, RGB, separate RGB. Plug it in, and now the R goes into metallic, the G goes into roughness, the blue is AO, so we're going to hit search, mix RGB, multiply, and then blue in there. And then I just put 1. There we go. And now you can see how there's a little bit more dimensionality to it. See how there's this roughness and there's definition to it now. And now we need to work on the normals. So we want to set this to non-color data. And the normals are also a bit off. You can see how it looks sort of like it, but the blue is a little splotchy. The reasoning is that you don't even really need the blue in a normal map. It's just kind of a background color. The red and the green are the 2 different axes. So what we're going to do is separate RGB again, and then combine RGB. But this time, instead of combining all 3, we're just going to combine red, green, and set blue to 1. Add a normal map node, and then connect the normals up. There. Now we have real definition to them. This is before, this is after. So there's a lot done in normals, surprisingly. Now the blue is actually reserved for the ink from the Inkling. So if we add a color ramp, and we just put it up here, and then we connect blue to that, you can see here that if we drag it back and forth, it's the how much ink has covered him and how long it is. So you can just like crank that up and down. However, we're not going to be needing to use that, so just get rid of it. Now the one last thing that we haven't used, the one thing we haven't used is the alpha of this color, and that's what's called a cavity map. However, I've seen this with Dark Samus, and I've applied the cavity map and it hasn't done anything, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. I almost forgot to put the alpha into the specular. So it's a little bit less, shiny. But now for this material, he is complete. The nodes are all correct, and the materials are all correct as it would be essentially in game. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish off all of the other materials. So instead of having to delete everything here and then rebuild the whole thing, I'm just going to hit Control C with the mouse in here and then delete that and Control V. Now actually you can see that it's the cape, so we know what to look for. So just search for the cape, the color, the cape of the PRM, and then the cape of the normal. There. Alright, so I've applied all the textures. Now I had to do a few tweaks, especially in the face, because the face it shouldn't have a metallic texture. Well, it shouldn't really be shaded metallic. It's just something that the game engine does or uses to shade it. So I just removed it entirely so it actually looked correct. And I also lightened up the AO pass because that's just too dark. We can put it at 0.6. And for the cape, I had to just take the two outer ones and hit Alt S, so it scales tangent, and I just did 0.01 so it doesn't intersect with itself. For the eyes, the eyes shading is a little bit weird currently because I believe there are two different UV sets for the eyes. So there's the one for just the eye socket, and then there's one for the iris so that they can move the iris around like this by just translating the X and Y, for example. But in order to actually use that with Blender, we don't have that separate UV map. So we have to use some clever hacks where I essentially just plug the UV map into a mapping changer, change the scale and the location a bit, and then apply it to both eyes. So that looks pretty good. There's a few rendering errors here and there just because of intersecting geometry and whatnot. However, I actually don't think that's even needed, that piece of geometry. Oh, it kind of is, so I'll leave it. But that is how to put anything from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate into Blender. And so you can see we have the armatures here, so if we want to pose them, we can. There we go, and then if you want to just rest position. So. Alright, yep, hope that helped. If you have any questions, I'd say post them in the description or post them in the comment section. And I'll try my best to either fix the current script that I have or just fix it by talking about it. Alright, thanks for watching.